Welcome to this week's episode of the Soto Mojo Podcast. My name is Trevor, and we're just a couple of high school baseball coaches who love talking Mariners baseball. Obviously, with the introduction today, you will notice that we are missing a substantial voice in the Soto Mojo corner, and that is Mr. Ethan Nemo. Unfortunately, he is down and out for the count again. He is sick. Is the danger of coaching kids is that you typically get whatever bugs are going around the schools. You get that first and foremost. The second time he's been sick in the last couple of weeks, he's really bummed he couldn't make the recording today. But with all the news that is dropping at such a rapid pace, decided we just would plug away with one where I fly solo again. So appreciate your patience, your understanding. Obviously going to be a little bit of a shorter show. But yeah, we're going to get right into it right now and talking through our Around the League. Lots of stuff going on. So if you've ever seen the meme where the WWE wrestler comes up alive out of the grave, that is what has happened. MLB Deadline News put that meme up on February 1 and said, man, apparently all of the owners and GMs just decided that they're going to wake up on February 1st and they're going to get to action. I mean, we even see the A's made a move. It's crazy. So we got a lot to cover. I'm going to break it down as quickly as possible. We'd be remiss if we didn't start with a gigantic trade that sent seismic waves throughout the MLB. And that was when Corbin Burnes got traded from the Brewers to the Orioles. Now, if you go look at the Orioles starting pitching rotation, it is absolutely filthy. So the Orioles trade away Joey Ortiz, DL Hall, and a 34th overall pick for Corbin Burnes, who is one of the best starting pitchers in baseball. He's going to be absolutely nasty at the top of that rotation and gives them a ton of depth. They are already going to take an already dangerous team and now have just added that additional layer to go really take over the AL East. They saw the Yankees go get Soto. They see other teams trying to load up, and they're just not going to let that happen. They've got a young core. They just had a Rookie of the Year last year. They're probably going to have another AL Rookie of the Year this year, and they are going to be absolutely treacherous to see this season, and Corbin Burnes being added is just going to add to that. We've also seen a bunch of extensions that have come through that have been pretty big in and of themselves. So we saw that Bobby Witt Jr. signed an 11-year extension worth $288.7 million with the Royals, and it has an opt-out after the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th year of the contract, and also has a 3-year club option that could take the deal out to 14 years and $377 million. So Bobby Witt Jr. gets a deal very similar to Julio's, which is incentive laden, going to be based on MVP votes, all that kind of stuff, and will have the ability to make a ton of money in the process. But the Royals got their guy. They invest in him. Phenomenal young player, good corner piece for them to build around, and going to be a foreseeable future. It's going to be a piece for the foreseeable future here. AL West-wise, we saw that Jose Altuve signed a 5-year, $125 million extension with the Astros. He was set to be a free agent after this next coming year. And so they lock up a guy that's been there, been a core piece for them throughout all of their playoff runs, was there at the beginning of the rebuild, and now gets rewarded with another extension. This all but pretty much guarantees that Alex Bregman will be out. They probably weren't going to extend both, and so this will probably be the last year that Alex Bregman will be with the Astros. He will be set to hit the free agent market. I'd be pretty surprised if they signed him to an extension after they just got this done with Altuve. We also saw that Clayton Kershaw got re-signed with the Dodgers, which is a surprising move. But honestly, good news for the AL West because he was getting looks by the Rangers. That was last year. That was this year. It feels like that team has been very interested in bringing in Clayton. Obviously has shoulder issues. Obviously at the end of his career. really glad to see him, one, stay in the NL, but also to stay with the Dodgers, right? Stay with the program that gave you your start. And, that is going to be the place, hopefully, where he retires and will be known as a Dodger for life. So good news all around on that side of things. We saw a ton of one-year deals. We saw a bunch of relievers come off the board. I'm telling you, all of a sudden, as soon as February 1st hit, it was on. And it feels like every day, it feels like even when we when we hop on these shows, even week to week, that deals drop while we're on. And that was the case as well today. We just saw that Gary Sanchez just signed a one-year deal with the Brewers, $7 million, as we're hopping on the show. But we did see earlier in the week that Carlos Santana signed a one-year deal with Minnesota. Justin Turner signed a one-year, $13 million deal with the Blue Jays. Kevin Pillar signed a deal with the White Sox on a minor league deal. And then a plethora of relievers come off the board. So we saw Diekman go to the Mets, Fujinami go to the Mets. We saw Phil Maton go to Tampa Bay. We saw the Middleton go to St. Louis. There's a lot of people that were holding out hope that Kenyon was going to come back to Seattle, goes to the Cardinals instead. Ken Giles, Mariners legend, Ken Giles, the guy that Jerry tried to take a flyer on a couple years ago when he was injured, didn't work out. He just signed a deal with the Braves. Jose Cisnero went to the Angels. Jay Jackson went to the Twins. Ryan Brazier goes to the Dodgers. We saw Wandy Peralta. Now, that's the biggest deal out of all of these, that Wandy Peralta signed a 4-year, $16.5 million deal with 3 opt-outs with the Padres. And hilariously, within the same hour, Willie Peralta with with the Pirates signed a deal as well. So there was some confusion on X about which Peralta was getting what deal, and it was kind of funny to see. He last pitched for Detroit back in 2022, but definitely is a piece that is, formidable, a good player that just went to the Pirates. And like I mentioned earlier, a little teaser that the A's were involved in a trade. Shocking. I didn't even know that was allowed, which we did see news that I did not actually have in the notes to talk about, but that Las Vegas is, it looks like they're getting some cold feet, saying, that maybe they should go back to Oakland. Obviously, the owners don't want that. We saw that Portland got back in the mix where they're trying to put their back in the mix, trying to get a team there, trying to lure them over. That whole situation is an absolute crap show. I have no idea what's going on and where the A's are going to end up. Those poor guys, man. But as of now, they're still plugging away, and we did see that they traded for Ross Stripling from the Giants. And they gave away utility player Jonah Cox. So they were involved in a trade, moving around some players. We also saw that the White Sox acquired Dominic Fletcher from the Diamondbacks in exchange for Christian Mena. And what we're seeing, and I already mentioned this team already here, but we did see that the Brewers have been involved in some really interesting conversations. We don't really know what's going on with the Brewers. Are they just tearing it all down to the studs? Are they competing? Are they trying to make a run? What's really weird is we see a bunch of NL teams that are just kind of sitting on the sidelines. They're watching the Dodgers pay $1 billion, but we've seen teams like the Mets kind of take a step back. Right, we've seen the Padres take a huge step back, trying to cut payroll. We've seen that the Marlins aren't really involved. The Reds are up and coming, but they're not really spending big. The Phillies are kind of standing pat after the extended NOLA, but there's not a whole lot of action going on in the National League in particular, other than the big teams in Atlanta and the Dodgers, etc. Right? Diamondbacks are trying to make a move. I think they've actually had quietly one of the best off seasons that any team has had so far. But it's interesting to just look at the Brewers. There's been a lot of conversations all of a sudden about Willie Adames, about Christian Yelich, about Devin Williams. There was a big push from Mariners Twitter there for about a day, looking to track down Devin Williams. But obviously those conversations died when we made a big move that we'll talk about in just a second. But man, it is just an interesting situation to see what is Milwaukee going to do. And so we shall see as the offseason progresses, but they have definitely not made any win now moves that we can see anyways. And lastly, some news that I know that all of you really care about. Some news that you have been waiting this entire show to hear an update about. And that is uniforms. I don't know if you guys saw, but the Phillies City Connects got leaked. They are atrocious. They are so bad. They look like a club softball team from the 90s with terrible font, terrible colors. I don't know what they were thinking. The City Connects are such a mixed bag to me. There's some City Connects that are really cool that I'm like, man, I would love one of those jerseys. And then there's some that are just bad. And unfortunately, the Phillies fall into that category. They're just trash. I have no idea who designed these, but just not a fan in general. So there you go. That's the most important news of the day that I'm sure you're tuning in to listen into about is uniform news. There you go. Can tune out. No, I'm just kidding. With that being said, let's get into our Mariners updates. All right, so we have a ton to cover with Mariners updates. Holy smokes. Of course, we make a ton of moves, and Ethan and I are both out of town over the weekend. So we apologize. We didn't get to do an Instagram live. We didn't get to do Twitter space about the big move that happened over the weekend. If you didn't hear, the Mariners made a trade for a guy named Gregory Santos. It was a mammoth deal. Ethan was right. I made a bet in my hot take that we were done making moves. I was wrong. Ethan, there you go, bud. He was right. Hopefully you're smiling, laying there in bed, recovering. But man, I'm telling you, this trade is a win now move if I've ever seen one. Let's go. Let's go. So, yes, we did have to trade. We traded Prelander Baroa, Zach DeLoach, and the 69th overall pick in the 2024 draft for Gregory Santos. However, Santos is a dude. He is going to solidify the back end. Anybody that was worried about us trading Topa to Minnesota, you can rest because we just traded for a guy that arguably could be a closer, premier bullpen piece for literally any team in baseball. And he's coming here and joining Brash and Munoz. So all of a sudden, a bullpen that was a little thin gets a lot stronger overnight. We trade away a couple of guys that I understand there's going to be people that are bummed, right? So let's start with Zach DeLoach. Zach DeLoach was a name that Jerry DiPoto mentioned earlier in the offseason as a guy that's probably going to break through this year in 2024, crushed in AAA, guy that we've been excited about for a long time coming up. Got drafted out of A&M, right? Solid player, has climbed the ranks and been really consistent about it. However, with us trading for Luke Raley, kind of made him expendable, right? So he's now behind Raley. He's behind Canzone. He's behind Marlowe. He's behind Trammell currently. He's behind Haniger, Julio, right? There's a lot of guys ahead of him that was going to be tough for him to break through one way or another after we signed Luke Raley, or after we traded for him, I should say, with the Rays. So bummed to miss out on him. Honestly, I think he's going to go and he's going to crush. I think he's going to be really good. But we are trading. You got to give to get, right? We are trading a guy that isn't proven yet, hasn't broken into the bigs. We don't know what he is, for a proven commodity in Santos. There is a concern about his elbow. I haven't seen a lot of buzz about that. What's weird is before the trade, you see a lot of White Sox fans talking about how they're worried about Santos's elbow, some injury concerns. But all of a sudden, nobody's really talking about that. All of his projections are saying that he's going to be at spring training. He's going to start an opening day roster. So it looks like the health side of things should be fine. I doubt that we would give up this amount of capital if we were worried about the physical passing. He did pass the physical, obviously. So you know what? I'm just saying I'm going to give room that the guys that have all the information, that have seen the physical, have seen the, whatever, all the information in front of them, that they are going to make the best decision possible. They made a big move, big splash, that Gregory Santos should be a huge part of our team here in 2024. We also gave up Prelander Baroa. Now, that's a name we have talked about extensively on this show. I understand. I am one of you that is disappointed to see him go. Baroa has stuff. Baroa is a really good pitcher, plus changeup, stallion of a pitcher. I think eventually he's going to get his bearings and be really good. However, he has shown that he has control issues. He did get a small stint with the big league club last year, and he struggled. He showed that he wasn't quite ready for that stage. So we are, again, trading guys that have not proven anything yet. We have traded guys that have potential and a draft pick for a guy in Gregory Santos, who in 2023 pitched in 60 games, had a 3.39 ERA. He had 66 strikeouts, 1.30 whip. He's got a plus slider. We are not saying that lightly. He has a plus sinker. Again, the plus heavily emphasized in the plus category. So that slider is second in run value in all of baseball. And the sinker he throws is absolutely gross. Gross. Filthy. Throws it 102 miles an hour on the upside, low side of 98. So we have a guy that is also, this is probably the music to Jerry's ears because he loves these two words. He's under club control until 2029. So if you remember, Munoz got a contract extension. Brash is at the beginning of his career and on a longer contract. So we have these three dudes locked up for years, and they are some of the best relievers in baseball right now. They're probably three of the top 25 for sure. For sure. And there's a chance that they're even top 10 right now, but that's debatable. There's arguments to be made there. But by the end of the year, we could very easily see that all three of these dudes are three of the top 10 relievers in all baseball. And we're adding that to a rotation that is the best in baseball. Okay. Any list out there that has the Mariners as less than third, second, or first in overall starting rotation has no idea what they're talking about. It is not worth the paper that list is written on. It's not. And honestly, there's an argument to be made that if the list doesn't have them as number one, what are we even talking about? We have three guys that are considered aces. They could all be aces on multiple different teams, including our own. There's an argument to be made that Castillo, Kirby, and Gilbert could all be aces with the Mariners. And so what we're looking at here is a rotation where those three dudes are all battling for the number one spot to prove that they're the ace. And then we have two guys in Wu and Miller who, as rookies, ended up being in the top 50 list of all starting pitching in all of baseball. Okay. Which means that those guys are probably right now like 3-4, right? 3-4 pitchers somewhere in there, probably threes. So we have three aces and two threes. And you're telling me that's not the best starting rotation in baseball? You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. If you don't have them in the top three, you're just wrong. You're just wrong. So you have the top three rotation in baseball and now a bullpen stacked with three of the best relievers in baseball. And again, we don't use the traditional closer, right? So with these three guys, it's not like one of them is always going to see the ninth inning, right? It's going to be a mixture depending on matchups and whatever, and different strengths and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we have three guys that have absolutely nasty stuff. And honestly, if you look at it, I'm sad to lose Baroa. However, there's a guy that me and Ethan are both really high on in our system that has very similar traits, very similar profile to Baroa in Carlos Vargas. Vargas is absolutely nasty. We were talking about him before this trade. He's a name that we could very easily see fitting into that Topa role where it's that fourth guy that's a good setup guy, good fifth, sixth, seventh inning guy. Because obviously those three guys are not going to pitch every game, obviously. And so we need Saucedo, right? We need Spire. We need these guys to step up. We need Thornton to step up. We need these dudes that are going to get innings. We need those guys to step up as well. But I'm just saying overall, the unit that we are putting out there, the pitching that we will put out there is going to have a lot of low run games. We are going to see a lot of 2-1, 3-2, 1-0. And I just hope our offense can just give us a little bit of production, make those games less close, but the offensive production of the other team obviously down. So huge trade for us. Very excited about Gregory Santos. Huge news over the weekend. If you didn't hear, really excited about him. We also signed a guy named Heath Hembry to a minor league contract. He got a spring training invite. We did see today that the spring training invitee list was released and saw that there's some really cool names in there. Now, some people don't really care about the spring training list just simply because you're looking at it going, hey, like a lot of these guys aren't going to make the team. A lot of these guys are going to start in the minors. A lot of these guys might not even ever make the big league team. However, what's really cool about these guys, especially at the beginning of spring training, is they're getting their shot, right? This is the dream that every little kid has when they're out in their backyard playing baseball, is just getting a shot, giving it a go. And so these guys get to go show their brass. And every year we get a couple of surprises, right? Last year was Jose Caballero. He came out of nowhere to me. I had no idea who Jose Caballero was last year. Came out of nowhere. Obviously, he didn't make the big league team right off the bat, but he did come up and contribute later in the year. And that was a guy that he did produce in spring last year. So it's one of those things where I look at it going, hey, one of these guys could be a September call up for us. This guy could be, a late addition. He could, we always tend to have at least one or two guys that are on the spring training invitee list that end up making a difference on the squad this year that we weren't expecting. So keeping track of these guys is kind of fun. So part of that trade, though, that we were just talking about with Santos is that that opened up a 40-man spot. We went and claimed a guy named Colin Snyder off waivers from the Diamondbacks. And I'll just tell you this. I'm going to list off the measurables that I got from Baseball Savant and tell me if this sounds familiar to you. So Colin Snyder is a right-handed pitcher with great numbers in barrel percentage, hard hit percentage, ground ball percentage, and average exit velo. Sound familiar? Basically, every guy that we've gotten this year in the offseason has fit those metrics on the positive or negative side of that based on if they're offense or defense, right? So if they're pitchers, we're looking for guys that have low barrel percentage, low hard hit percentage, high ground ball percentage, and low average exit velo. We've seen almost every reliever that they've brought in as the spaghetti that they're throwing against the wall fits that metric almost to a T. And then on the flip, every hitter that we've brought in has been high barrel percentage, high hard hit rate, low ground ball percentage, high average exit velo, right? Are you seeing a theme here? And it's because at T-Mobile, in the park that we have, with the marine layer, all the things that come with hitting at T-Mobile, especially T-Mobile, barrel percentage matters. Because guess what? If you have a high barrel percentage, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there is a marine layer or if it's cold out or whatever. The ball's still going to go out if you barrel it up. And so, again, we see this trend on the pitching side and on the hitting side where you can tell what metrics are really important to our front office in this offseason. And I think it's the right way to go about it. I think it's great. So we see another reliever that comes in. Colin Snyder could be a dude for us. Honestly, I saw a bunch of videos of his stuff. He's nasty. He's good. So it'll be really interesting to see where he fits in and what he can do in the lab. So part of this offseason that we find ourselves in is that this is where we see a lot of lists start coming out, right? Prospect lists. We start seeing rankings of position players. We start seeing, the best of what position, all of that. And so we did see Keith Law's top 100 prospects come out, in which he lists 3 Mariners prospects. We have number 37, Cole Emerson, number 46, Cole Young, number 61, Harry Ford. You're going to notice that Harry Ford has slipped down on a lot of lists, and that unfortunately has been a consistent theme across the lists that we've seen, but it's kind of par for the course. You're going to see prospects rise. You're going to see them fall. You're going to see them kind of go from one side to the other. And what we've seen is that Harry Ford has had a hot bat. Dude rakes. There's absolutely no doubt about it. He absolutely rakes. However, article came out talking about how he has been below average defensively, and that has been a struggle for him. And so especially at the catching position, that is something you cannot have. You need a catcher that's going to be above 990 in their fielding percentage. Harry Ford's not there. And so we'll see if he can increase on that end of things. He might make the Mariners make a move here. And that might be because he's hitting so well that he basically puts him in a position where he has to be brought up in some capacity. That might mean a position change. That has been talked about in the past. It could be interesting to see if he could make it at third base. That has been a conversation in the past. There was conversation about him being a corner outfielder, right? There's a lot of things at play here. And it'll be interesting to see, but it is really cool to see that Cole Emerson has come onto the scene in a very big way, has come up in a lot of people's rankings. Like I said, he's at the top of our list with Keith Law at number 37. When the Mariners released their updated farm system numbers of where they have guys ranked, it'll be really interesting to see where they fall. But we could see Cole Emerson being in that number one spot. And that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. We did see an update from Ty France that he is at Driveline still. It looks like he's in the best shape that he's been in that I've ever seen him as a Mariner. And the videos of his swing look good. I have good news to report. It looks like his barrel position is back where it should be. His launch angle looks back where it should be. It looks like his weight differential is back where it should be. Towards the end of the season, we saw him grounding into a ton of double plays. And the reason why, there's a lot of reasons why, but he was landing on his front foot, too much weight on the front foot at the point of contact, was rolling over the ball a ton. Obviously, he couldn't run out any double plays. He was not beating out any double plays. That also didn't help. But just his swing in general needed to get back to basics. And what was really cool about watching this video is if you compare his swing in the Driveline update and his swing when he first got brought over to the Mariners, it looks almost identical. It looks like he's gone back to what he was at. Tony Gwynn did a great job with him and his swing when he was at San Diego State, constructing it. It became who he was. It's how he got to the big leagues. And a lot of times, sometimes these guys just need a reset. Some different things to think about, some different swing thoughts, readjust, go back to fundamentals. Looks like Ty France has done that. It would be great to see Ty France come back. It looks like he's pretty motivated, man. He does not need us telling him that he had a rough 2023. He knows. But if he could come back and have a resurgence and look like he has in the past with the Mariners before the injuries and all that kind of weird stuff that he's had, look out. Our lineup gets so much deeper if Ty France is back to form, which is great. We also saw some light get shed on a move that a lot of Mariners fans were not very excited about. So when Gino Suarez got traded to the Diamondbacks, a lot of people were upset, right? Good vibes, great clubhouse guy. We loved his energy, loved him as a teammate, loved his interviews, just loved who he was as a person. But we did find out from a Divish article that the front office was pretty upset with him when he came into spring training in 2023 because he was out of shape, just didn't have the conditioning piece. And honestly, that would answer a lot of questions, right? A lot of us are wondering, where did the power go? We were wondering where the swing speed went. Why did the strikeouts go up? Honestly, again, I've said this before and I'll say this again. You are totally fine with strikeouts if the power numbers are on the other end. I don't mind you leading the league in home runs if you hit 40 bombs. I'm just not, right? That's probably going to still come with 85 to 90 RBIs, right? You're still hitting, your slug numbers are there. Fine. But unfortunately, we got high strikeout numbers from Gino, from Teo, from JK, and none of the power, or very little of the power, I should say. And so this article coming out kind of shed light on why they were okay getting rid of him. I do wish him the best in the Diamondbacks system. I hope that he goes down there and absolutely crushes. We will be absolutely rooting for him. I think the Diamondbacks are just my NL team now. I don't know why, but last postseason, I just got endeared to their lineup. I mean, there's a lot of ex-Mariners, right? Sewald, Ketel Marte, now Gino, right? Lots of guys there. So you know what? They're my NL team. We'll rock and roll. But it is kind of telling why we got rid of Gino, why we're bringing in young guys like Rojas or guys like Urias that are hungry to prove a spot. And I think that only good things come from competition to get on the roster. So I think only good things can come from that. Like I said, we did see the spring training calendar did get dropped. I'm shocked. Not really. That we only get 10 games en route, man. Every year I go, what a missed opportunity. So many people would watch it, even games that don't matter. We get 10 games en route for spring training. It makes no sense. Now, granted, it's one more than we got last year, so here we go. Not a trend in the negative direction, but it is funny just to see that. I don't get it. When we have like 30 games, right around there, 30 games, and we get to see 10 of them, and the rest of it, we just look at a box score and a stat sheet. I guess if that's how you want us to watch, then I guess rock and roll. We'll do that. But part of that spring training is we did just see the spring training hats. They got released. They are fire. They are so cool. I absolutely love the look of them, the light teal and the dark blue with with the star and all that stuff. I think it looks great. However, we just saw our BP hats release, and they are multi-tone, multicolor, old S with new color. It's ugly, dude. There are people that are like, oh man, these are great. I'm like, hey, you know what? You guys go rock them, to each their own, rock and roll. These suck. They are terrible. I don't understand what people see in them. Obviously, I'm not the epitome of style, so maybe I'm missing something, but I'm not a fan. Moving on to some predictions. Now, I do have to give you this caveat. Okay. Whenever we're talking about predictions, none of us are putting a ton of weight into this, right? There are some people that put a ton of weight into what the team is going to look like on paper. But that's what predictions are, right? What is a team on paper? Looking at past performance, extrapolating it out, and giving some projections based on the information that they have on how people should do. But there's a reason why we play the game, and it's because the game is not played on paper. And every year there's teams like the Padres that are phenomenal on paper that suck, right? And then there's teams that are really bad on paper, like the Diamondbacks, that ended up being really good. So you never know. You need to play the games. So on one end, you have projections where people take it way too seriously and they think that it's the gospel. And then you have people on the other end that are like, dude, there's no value in looking at projections at all. Who cares? Don't even put that in front of me. I don't care. For us, we fall somewhere in the middle. It's just fun to look at just based on the statistics. And it's also interesting to see what the national media is saying about us. And so unsurprisingly, as I'm talking about our rotation, the bullpen, etc., it's no surprise that our Fangraphs prediction is that we're going to lead the league in runs allowed at 4.28. Would not be shocked if that was the result. One thing that was shocking, however, is that we are ranked number 5 as the number 5 most likely team to make the World Series at 4.6%. We are ranked to potentially win the division at 26% and 64% just to make the playoffs in general. And all of those are better than the Rangers by a pretty good margin. So we are not the only ones saying from the rooftops that the Rangers are going to have a tough year. I think the writing's on the wall that they're going to have a tough start to the season. They're going to have to really depend on their offense because half of their starting rotation is hurt. Corey Seager is coming off a core injury, right? There's a lot of things playing against them. Now, I'm not willing to call them out completely. I think they're hoping that they can just hang around 500 ball for the first half of the season and then at the All-Star break start really catching fire and have a strong second half. I could totally see that happening. But the national voices are seeing a lot of what we're seeing, which is that they don't, on paper, have a team that looks like it's going to be off to a good start. We shall see. We did see that the MLB projected the stat leaders of all of baseball. They're projecting that Luis Castillo will win the lowest ERA at 3.27. I could see that. I could see George Kirby pushing him for that as well. And like I'm saying, man, we have 3 aces. We have 3 guys that are aces that all could be going for that low ERA mark. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But you know what? We have apparently finally broken through the East Coast bias where the national media is giving credit where credit's due, that they're finally seeing the light, that the Mariners are going to make some noise simply because of our strength in our pitching. And if our offense can even remotely keep pace, if we could just have a league average offense, watch out. Watch out. We also saw an interview with Justin Hollander. First and foremost, man, great interview. Great interview. I think from here on out, Jerry DiPoto should just let Hollander run it because he was honest. He was genuine. He was real. He apologized that they understand that they totally muffed the offseason between 22 and 23, that they didn't do enough to give us enough depth. And so they're committed to not making those same mistakes again. And we have seen them do that. We are deeper right now. We are more capable of taking on an injury or two than we have been in a long time, in many years. And so it's really interesting to hear an interview with Hollander when he's talking that way, and did point out that they've made trades with 30% of the teams in the MLB, which is a fun little stat. But it was just good. It was just good to hear. If you haven't listened to it, it's just short snippets all over X from the interview itself. Took ownership, talked about their plan for what this offseason would look like, and then is doing that, right? All things that you can respect. Some news that dropped today. So again, I'm recording this on February 7th, Wednesday. We saw the Mariners do a cool thing. So again, it feels like they're making a lot of moves to increase the chemistry, right? They're trying to help get the locker room back into a good vibe situation. Last year's team never really had an identity. They struggled to find an identity. They wrestled around in a bunch of different ways. They won in a lot of different ways. They lost in a bunch of different ways. They never really got an identity. And so what I'm seeing right now is they're bringing in a lot of veteran leadership. They're bringing in good chemistry, and in the city of Seattle, just some goodwill. So today they signed Kanan Smith and Jigba, who is the brother of Jackson Smith and Jigba, who, if that name sounds familiar, it should. Wide receiver for the Seattle Seahawks, rookie last year, who was a stud for the Hawks. And we signed him off waivers today. And he was with Pittsburgh, only played in 15 games with Pittsburgh, 24 years old, didn't really do a whole lot, went 4 for 32, had 5 RBIs, whatever. Small sample size, not tripping about that. But cool move, right? Cool move for Seattle to get behind you, to celebrate. And the only downside to me is great move, cool move, fun, is that we had to get rid of Darren McCoggin. So we DFA'd Darren McCoggin to free up room on the 40-man for him. Darren McCoggin is a guy that's kind of a career quad A guy, pitched for us with the Rainiers. He did come up and do a spot start or two, I think, last season for us with the Mariners. Not really a guy that's ever going to break through, probably. I mean, you can never say never, but probably never going to break through to be a dude in our starting rotation. But it does stink to get rid of him, because if there is any injuries to our starting pitching, we are light there, right? We have Emerson Hancock. Darren McCoggin was kind of the next guy after Hancock. So kind of a bummer to see us lose some depth there with the starting pitching rotation. However, cool move in general to see the Mariners go get Kanan Smith and Jigba and see how he could potentially work into, obviously probably start with AAA, and then see, he might be one of those guys that ends up making the club at some point during the year. So we shall see. So anyways, lots, like I said, to talk about, a ton to break down. Appreciate you breaking down the Seattle tidbits with me here. Looking forward to seeing more moves in the future as we're closing in on spring training. Just a little note, we are 50, yes, 50, 50 days away from opening day. It's coming in hot. Pitchers and catchers are reporting in a couple of days. Spring training right behind that. Mariners are full steam ahead. I have more hope than I probably should. I'm a hopeful optimist when it comes to the Mariners, and most of the time that comes back to haunt me. Hoping that isn't the case this year. But let's get into our player of the week. All right, so my player of the week is a guy that, unfortunately, when he left, kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, not mine. I absolutely loved watching this guy play. I was a third baseman growing up and a reliever. And so I have a bent towards third baseman and closers. Those are just typically the guys that I tend to root for the most. And so my guy, if you haven't picked up on it already, is Kyle Seager. Kyle Seager played his entire career with the Mariners, ended up putting up 36.9 WAR for his career, 251 batting average, 242 home runs, 807 total RBIs, 442 slug, 763 OPS. He was an all-star in 2014 with 25 home runs, 96 RBIs, 268 batting average. He had a gold glove that year, got voted number 20 in MVP votes. Dude was just a consistent guy for the Mariners, man, for years. For 11 years, consistent. And he's one of those guys that I bemoan the fact that he never got to make the playoffs, man. Never got to make the playoffs and put in the time. I'd be lying if I told you that I didn't cry when they played Carolina on the night that we got eliminated from the playoffs. He gets called off the field. His wife is up there behind home plate. They played Carolina, where he's from. And man, it's just a really touching moment. He breaks down, hugging his teammates. And he's up there with Felix with me. Like, the fact that he never got to play in a playoff game is a travesty. It's honestly disappointing when you look at the years. We had promising years like 2015, right? We're on the cover of Sports Illustrated, favored to win it all, win the World Series. We don't do anything, right? 2018, have a huge veteran clubhouse where we could go make a run. Don't make it. Then we strip it down to the studs. And honestly, I think that's where Kyle had most of his grievances, is that he had signed a big extension with the Mariners to stay there basically the rest of his career. And then they started a rebuild on him. And so we only knew about his gripes towards the end. Started leaking some stories to reporters and giving them quotes off the record, whatever. So again, not the most classy move on the end of that. However, I don't hold that against him. Right? Of course, he's going to feel that way about an organization that he feels like wasted a few years of his career after he signed a big long extension and then wouldn't trade him. So he got stuck here. But I don't hold that against him, man. He was consistent. He was beloved by fans and the people of Seattle. The front office might not like him just because of kind of how things ended, but I don't care. Right. So there's a chance that Kyle never comes back to Seattle, never gets, honored in any way, which would suck. Right. When guys have given their entire careers and did as much as he did, produced as much as he did, I just loved watching Kyle Seager play. Right. The web gems he had at third base. He had some incredible plays over there, worthy of the Gold Glove that he got. Power bat from the left side, some really clutch home runs, right? Just a guy, right? I loved watching Kyle Seager play and worthy of my Player of the Week moniker. And man, I hope you guys loved Kyle Seager as much as I did, man. He's great to watch, great player, great man. Now he's coaching his boys in North Carolina and just living the life, man. I think he got a farm, all kinds of stuff, right? Living exactly how he wanted to. Super happy for him. Hope he does come back and gets honored someday. But man, love Kyle Seager. So let's get into our prospect insider. All right, our prospect insider this week is interesting. He got a lot of steam this week on X talking about kind of what he brought to what they call gas camp or shove camp, whatever you want to call it. It's like the pitchers camp before pitchers and catchers report to spring training. And apparently he's generating quite a bit of buzz. He's a 12th round pick in 2023. He went to the University of Pittsburgh. Before that, he was at Penn State. Honestly, his college career was a bit of a roller coaster. He had a couple of good years. He had a couple of rough years. And then he came to the Mariners organization, got drafted in the 12th round, saw action in Modesto last year. So he pitched in 5 games and dominated, absolutely dominated. So he pitched 15 total innings, had a 0.060 ERA, 15 Ks with only 2 walks, and a 26% strikeout percentage. Just absolutely dominated. And so when he came into camp this year, the reason why he's generating a lot of buzz is that he's throwing the hardest out of anyone. Apparently his velo is higher than anyone else in the camp right now. That's there. And just his understanding of his pitch shapes and location strategy is being known as elite. And that's coming from coaches that are there. So we have coaches that are reporting back that Logan Evans apparently is a name to be reckoned with, someone that we should be familiar with. Highly unlikely that he makes the club in 2024. However, a name to be watching for it to break through this year, to climb up and potentially be a name to be watching going into 2025 is a very exciting prospect on the pitching side of things. So, it's always nice. It's fun. It's funny to talk about stuff that like, hey, we might not see this guy for a while, but it's just nice to know these names, right? To be familiar with these names, be familiar with some stats, be familiar with what's going on. And so that way, when he does get called up, you can be like, dude, I totally called that. I knew that guy. So that's why we love doing this prospect insider here in the offseason, just for you to get to know some of these guys. Logan Evans, name to watch. Let's wrap it up with the hot corner. So last week, Ethan's hot corner was right on the money that the Mariners were not done with what they were going to do here in the offseason. I said they were, was proven wrong, happily wrong. And what's funny is Ethan is sick, down and out for the count. However, he did take a second to go into our notes and write down in our hot corner that his hot corner for this week is that we're still not done. So he thinks another move's on his way. Honestly, at this point now, I have no idea. My hot corner is that Blake Snell is waiting for the Mariners to budge. And I don't think they're going to. We've seen him get the offer he did from the Yankees. He turned that down. It seems like Boris is bound and determined to just hold out as long as possible, trying to get Snell a big payday, which, to each his own. I think Snell is waiting for a guy to go down with injury where a team gets desperate to bring on a starting pitcher. We'll see. Hopefully that's not us. And I am just hoping that, if he's going to take a hometown discount, like he's not going to sit out the year. So a team is going to end up with Blake Snell. And I think the longer this goes, the more likely it is that he takes a discount. And if we're talking about teams he's most likely to take a discount with, it's his home team, right? It's the Mariners. So I could very much see Snell, the longer this thing goes, that we will sign him. And if we do, that means that we're probably trading a young arm. Now, we could go to a 6-man rotation, try to protect arms, try to lower innings. That's a potential. Most pitchers don't like being on a 6-man rotation, so we probably wouldn't do it for very long if we did. Or we put one of our young guns, Wu or Miller, into the bullpen, limit their innings, and then bring them in later. Who knows, right? There's a lot of variables that could come into play if we did sign Blake Snell. However, my hot take is the longer this thing goes, the more likely it is that we sign Blake Snell. So that is my hot corner. Guys, thank you so much for listening. It really is a blessing, man. Last week we were talking, this is very exciting news, by the way, so don't tune out quite yet. Very exciting news for the Soto Mojo podcast. Last week, we were talking about how our follower count on X went above 100. We were very excited about that. As of today, as I hopped on the air, we were at 326. So just in the last week and a half, not even a week and a half, follower count through the roof. We're getting a lot of engagement. People are liking stuff, subscribing. Please go listen. So if you are listening to us on a podcast platform, please go go subscribe, go write a comment before you close the app and go about your day. First of all, thank you for listening. Second of all, go rate, go subscribe, go do that. Help us get the word out about this podcast. It's getting busy. We're getting a lot of interactions on our posts on X. We're on all the social media platforms. We're growing in a lot of different ways. We're really excited to roll some new things out in the next couple weeks, maybe a couple months. We shall see. But man, this podcast has been a blast. Me and Ethan love doing it. Doesn't even feel like work. It's conversations we're having anyway that we're just putting on the air. We listen to you and your feedback. So thank you for reaching out, letting us know different things that you'd like us to talk about, asking questions, all of that. If you want to leave a voicemail, 253-201-4364. Go leave a voicemail with a take that we can respond to, and we will get that on the air and do that. So from just Trevor this week, blessings on blessings on blessings. This is the Soto Mojo podcast. Have a great week.